Hello and welcome to Season 13, Episode 6 of Unlimited Opinions. I'm Adam Bishop.
I am Mark Bishop.
We are, of course, reading Plato's Republic, this time discussing Book 5, so talking about women in the family, and then starting a little bit on what he means by having philosopher kings rule over the state. I know I mentioned earlier, I think before you read, that you would not like this one. What were your thoughts?
Well, I mean, it's crazy stupid. And you know, it's like he addresses the so-called elephant in the room towards the end
Of whether or not it's like actually practical.
Yeah.
Can you actually do this? Yeah.
Yeah, and then he doesn't really answer that question
Yes.
either. So you know, I get more and more hostile the further we get into this book, and I'm again feeling better about my young self. Because it's just so well, and I think it's just so impractical, and I think that's where I was. I have to pull my old transcripts and see where I was in my study of philosophy when I hit this
Right.
in detail, because when I was getting my degree, at first I was very enthusiastic, history of philosophy, and I really love logic, and logic and language and formal logic, and I think I took advanced formal logic. And then, some of the other stuff was pretty cool. Metaphysics was all right, but then I was getting more and more cynical about whether it was even worth studying, because it was like,
That doesn't sound like you.
really?
You're getting cynical about things.
Oh, you're making a joke.
Yes, yeah.
Yes, thank you for that.
You're welcome.
So somewhere in there, I read this.
Right.
And it's just so absurd. And now that I have the benefit of having been married for a long time, 29 years, because this is about women in the family, and then children as well, and then seeing how other people raise their children, and now I have a long legal career dealing with child custody issues. What he's proposing is just absurd.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not only completely and totally impractical, it's absurd on the merits.
Right. Which I guess we should talk about what he
Yes.
proposes to
Yes.
kind of get into it.
So I have nothing but hostile things
Yes.
to say about this silliness.
Yes.
This book is just stupid and silly. It's just trivializing, equating essentially men and women with dogs and pack animals.
Yeah. Yeah, this is, I think, my least favorite section that we've read so far. So
Good
I think
for you.
I'll at least agree a little bit on your points here.
Now, how does this play into his allegory for the human soul?
We'll get into that.
You're not going to give us the
I can try.
answer?
I can
Yeah,
try.
good luck. All right, so you want to get into
Or broad strokes, right? Because I think I talked about last time where he was talking. It seemed like he was going to start talking about the different types of states, but then we have a hard pivot at the very beginning of this book where he says, "Actually, hang on, there's something else."
His buddies say, "Hey, look, you
got to go back. You got to talk about this.
You got to talk about the ladies."
Yes, because he kind of just says, "Well, they'll live in common, and everybody will kind of be equal." So we have to go and actually talk about what that means, because that would be very drastically different for Greek society to say that this is going to be like an equal arrangement here. So how do you talk about this? And so then we get into women and the family here.
Now, he does make early on. He makes some good, I think, good points about. Well, men and women have, they're of the same kind because they're human. And then he says, well, some women are exceptional in some things, and men are exceptional in other things. And then, so there'll be overlap in competencies, but kind of glosses over the differences in the sexes. I mean, completely. And it talks about, well, there's really the only differences. One procreates, or one gives birth, or one
one begets children, the other bears children. Right.
Well, that's one of the differences,
right? Because that's what he kind of says. He says, "Well, we'll have to educate them both the same, right? They're both the same kind of thing. We should educate them both the same, both mentally and physically. So, like the same physical education requirements for women, for the men. Talking specifically, kind of about the rulers here. So, like the guardians up top.
And it seems like a lot of like Greek philosophers have the benefit of being more hands-on,
right?
Agrarian societies, and so there's a lot more kind of like they get their hands dirty, and they're in the mix, especially like animal husbandry and that kind of stuff. We're so far removed from that kind of stuff. Did he not watch like 10 boys play versus 10 girls play? Because it had to have been similar then than what it is now. It's not like the human race has changed or evolved one way or the other differently. And he's just like, well, yeah, there's could be, we're all this kind of the same type people.
Right. I'll have to go back and look at, what he says in the Greek here, because I think he has that same problem. I'm forgetting the exact section he talks about this, but he talks about natures, right? Where he says, well, men and women have the same human nature. That's right. But then he also talks about the nature of a physician or the nature of a carpenter. Right. And those aren't necessarily things that we would think about as having sort of immutable natures, right? Those are not in the nature of the human person. They're sort of accidental to the nature, like any human person.
But that's his main philosophy is that everybody has one nature, the one thing that they're good at. So a doctor is a doctor-like person. Right. Carpenter is a carpenter-type person. So it's very consistent.
Yes. Yeah. So, yeah. But I don't think that holds necessarily.
He's wrong.
Yes, exactly. Yes. That's what I'm saying. You can't talk about human nature in the same way that you talk about the nature of a physician, right? Those aren't the same type of nature, I would say. And he seems to kind of just conflate the two.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I don't know. There is a nature of a carpenter.
Right.
Or a nature of a physician.
Right. That's what I'm saying. Yeah. But then he continues on where he says, well, they'll have to be educated differently. He says, really the great natural, there is a great natural difference, he says. This is on page 162 for us, 453 C, B and C around there. But he says, well, really, the difference is really just in strength and sort of, I think he also says intelligence, almost, that really the men are just the same as women. Men are just a little bit better at everything, which of course can't be true, that we're not just the same. And the only difference isn't that we're better.
Well, I mean, he equates it to female and male watchdogs,
right?
And the female watchdogs are going to be the same. They're just going to be more diminutive. Right. I mean, I think that's really what his point is. Is well, it's interchangeable except for this other little factor.
Yeah. Yes. So, of course, I'm sure we both disagree there. But then he continues on into marriage in the family, where he says, well, now we have sort of these regulations about how to raise men and women, how to educate them, right? Same sort of standards for everybody. But then what does that mean for children? What does that mean for actually living?
Yeah. So the guardians are going to be the guardians. That's it. They won't be attracted to anyone else on earth. Through what? Education, I guess.
Right.
And the ideal society, his ideal society, is that they will be restricted among themselves, however, not restricted within themselves. So they can procreate with whatever, but then if you're better in battle, you're going to get more opportunities, I guess. State mandated, it seems like. And the kids will all be raised in common. They won't even know their parents.
Right.
Okay. That would just never work.
Yes.
I mean, practically speaking.
Yeah.
And anyway, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I think that
conversation.
No, you're right. I mean, I think that's true, right? Where he says, that's exactly what he's saying. They have to be held in common. They'll have to just live together. Because that's what we do for animals, right? It kind of comes down just to the animal husbandry.
But even a lot of animals are protective of their own young differently than what they are. Now, some, there are adoptions, and we've all seen the cute videos of, it's like the ugly duckling who was really a swan,
right?
That story. Yes. But so there are some times a mother or father or both will treat their non-biological children as if they're children. Of course, humans do that too, but not by government mandate and not by societal pressure. Right. You are going to treat this person, and then you'll have no control over your own children. As if now as a father, it's less likely, but not completely unlikely, that I won't be able to identify them if they're taken from me immediately. But I'm going to know they're of the cohort that were born, at a certain time. But the women, I mean, how are they going to be anonymous mothers? I don't think that's even practical.
Yeah, but I don't think it's possible
unless you have separate society, like you import the children or export the children some other way. Because there's whatever.
Right.
There's physical bonding that occurs.
Yes. But then he continues on because he says, well, then, those who are, more skilled, more talented, they'll have more opportunities. He really goes down this whole eugenics path where he's like, we have to find the best children. So whoever wins the most competitions will, have the most opportunities to sleep with the women.
Yes.
And it's like, we'll have the best children that way. We'll make sure, that we have the best kinds of people and things like that.
Absurd. It's just so absurd. To think that eugenics apply to humans both physically and intellectually and with character. It's like, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's just so silly.
Yes. No, I agree. And then he gets, I think, even worse here, where then he talks about what do you do with the, quote unquote, defective children, right? The children who don't, live up to your standards. And at times he kind of seems to say, and there was a good, actually, sort of section here from the editor. I don't know if you read through that section, but it seems like sometimes it's not necessarily, infanticide. Sometimes he kind of, well, at least it's not infanticide. Sometimes it's just the idea that they'll just be demoted to the lower classes, right? They'll be given to the common people rather than, just plucked out and killed. Right? He says, well, clearly, that's
because they're not going to be resentful.
Yes, no,
they're going to take all these reject babies, which is what they would be. Right. Well, this baby's not good enough for a guardian, so you're a peasant. That's not going to cause some ill will among the classes. Right. There will be no class distinctions. What? Yeah. But the bad, the defective children will be they're being demoted.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I'm also very frustrated with Plato here. Yes. I also very much disagree with him. He does make a good point here. I think this is on page 177. This is like 462.
Way up there. Okay.
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to skip so far ahead.
That's good.
I'm trying to keep you from just yelling at the book for too long. Yeah. And this is I think as I'm reading this more closely this time, I think kind of what I get the sense from Plato. Plato is best when he's talking broad strokes.
Yes.
When he gets into the details, it just kind of falls apart.
And that's that's the problem with all philosophy.
Yeah. No, I agree.
That's the weakness.
But he says here, this is at the top of page 177 for us, 462C, he says, what is more, such a state most nearly resembles an individual. For example, when one of us hurts his finger, the whole partnership of body and soul, constituting a single organism under a ruling principle, perceives it and is aware as a whole of the pain suffered by the part. And so we say that the man in question has a pain in his finger. The same holds good of any other part in which a man suffers pain or enjoys pleasure. And he continues on. It says, such a community will regard the individual who experiences gain or loss as a part of itself and be glad or sorry as a whole accordingly. Yeah. And I do think he makes a good point, right? Talking about sort of the body politic, that there is, if one part of the country suffers, right, it's not just, well, those people over there, they're suffering, I shouldn't care, right? It's part of one whole unit. Right, that the nation is a thing in itself that we should care about. Even if we are very, very far away from New York, if New York is being run into the ground, it's not just us, oh, well, whatever, right? We should care about that. We should care about the well-being of the people in New York, even if we are in Missouri.
I agree with the sentiment you express.
Yes.
But again, that's not what he's saying. He's saying that it will affect us, as if, like if you smash my finger with a hammer, my whole body's going to feel it. I'm going to know it immediately because I, as the body, the whole part, suffer the injury. And he's making that analogy among a society. And quite frankly, unless, well, let's put it this way. Let's say I don't turn on the internet, like for news for a week. I am not affected by any craziness that happens in Portland, Oregon, or San Francisco. Eventually I may. And you say, well, the whole society is affected. That's just not true. I mean, there are ways to have certain areas suffer and that others, like another example, which is a bigger one, there was a huge border crisis on the southern border and it was confined for a large part in that area until they, some Republican officials were shipping those people. Of course, there was large numbers overall, but shipping them to other areas. And all of a sudden, it's like, oh, this is a problem. We're being overwhelmed.
Yeah. I don't think I agree with you. I think it is the case that if something is happening in Portland, not immediately, it won't affect me right away, but down the line, it absolutely will.
Not absolutely will. It can.
Sure. But I think it should be treated as not, we shouldn't care.
That's a different argument.
I know. I know. it's okay. But like, what's the saying?
Let's stay focused on the argument.
Well, sure. But
the argument isn't whether we should care about San Francisco. We absolutely should. And we will all be better off if we all care about each other. And quite frankly, we'll all be better off if we do care about everybody around the world. Yes. We're all humans and we're all Catholics, just not everybody knows it yet. But having said that, not everything good or bad that happens in our country directly affects us. Either now or in the future will affect us. Especially, of course, he's talking about a small city state, so it's more true for what he's talking about than the United States of America has, with 200 and something or maybe 300 million people in it. But there's all sorts of living and dying. I mean, right now there's somebody dying somewhere in the United States. And there's somebody right now being murdered, most likely, somewhere in the United States. Is that going to affect me? Probably not, unless it happens in this area, this region or something. And so statistically, it only starts making a difference in a country our size is if enough people die.
Right.
That's the reality of it. And he's saying that if one bad thing happens to one person, then the whole society feels the pain. And so if one person benefits, then everybody benefits. And I don't think that flows. Because if 100 people, that's part of the problem with the current debate about AI and how it's benefiting like the billionaires or whatever. Like Bernie Sanders just issued a statement this week saying we need to stop it because all it's doing is enriching the billionaires. That might be true. I don't know how that's going to play out. I think it'll probably benefit all of us, but it could be that they benefit and other people don't.
Right. Yeah.
Or it could be a mixed bag or whatever. I don't know.
Yeah.
All right. I went on a long.
That's all right.
Monologue.
I'm talking more, I guess, in the ideas of sort of things, right? Because what's the expression? Like, as goes California, so goes the nation, right? Where it's like basically every bad policy that we have now was done 30 years ago in California. Right. So in the sense of, sort of the things that are being discussed in certain parts of the country don't stay isolated in that part of the country. Right. All of the sort of, drug policies of the gay marriage and everything like that. Right. A lot of that started in particular localized areas and it spreads. So it shouldn't be treated. I know that's not what you're saying. Right. That it's like, well, that won't affect us ever. I know that's not what you're saying. But in terms of Plato's point here, softening his point, I know you're going to protest, but in the sense that, we are part of something real, in terms of the nation, right? There's something real about the United States that connects us as people that doesn't connect me to someone who's from Mexico, right? Policies that are passed in Mexico are much less likely to affect me than policies passed in California, right? Those policies are much more likely to affect me at some point down the line, right? And we should pay attention to that. We are sort of part of one body politic on a broader scale. Not every single thing that happens will necessarily impact me. But I think it is a good, again, sort of broadening Plato's point, right? Recognizing the interconnectedness of things, that we are United States citizens, that does affect us in some way.
I agree with what you're saying.
Yes.
I don't agree with what Plato is saying in the book.
Yes. Well, I'm trying to draw good things out of this book.
Excellent. Good job.
Thanks.
Yeah, you did a great job of distilling wisdom.
Yes, thank you for that.
His absurd philosophy.
Yes, thank you.
Monologue, whatever, or dialogue.
Right. Because then he continues on, he talks a little bit more about that, right? Considering, the success of the nation as, my personal success, right? We'll have more of a stake in things if we treat, what happens over there as either my failure or my success. I'll want to change that if I view it as something happening to me. And he continues on like that.
He talks about how, sons will show their fathers all the customary honor and love and obey their parents. Wait a second. How do they even know who their parents are?
Right.
They don't. None of the guardians will honor and obey their parents because they don't have parents. Oh, they're just going to honor and obey everyone that's a guardian? I guess so.
Yeah.
And then what are they going to think about the people who aren't guardians? They're going to say plebes. They're going to, the human nature will be looking down upon them.
Right.
And you're going to treat them as the others. And he never addresses that.
Right.
The negative social implications of the classes that he would be creating and the constraints
I think
that everyone would be living under. And it would have to be a totalitarian state to initially implement it, and then ever increasing force necessary to keep everybody in line.
Right.
And the guardians, they have to be really numerous. They'd have to have special enforcement units that may be the auxiliaries, which would be like the SS. You know, I mean, we're talking about a truly dictatorial, totalitarian, Orwellian state.
Right. I think the closest he gets to trying to answer this, like on 181, which is like 465E and then 466A, where he says, well, earlier on you objected, well, the guardians won't be happy with anything. How would we know of them as happy? He says, well, it comes down to that sort of education, that considering of everything in common, right? That won't lead to any antipathies because like everything would be considered part of us, right? This is all part of our own thing. That very, very communitarian approach, that there won't be that resentment because everything would be taken in common as like part of this common project. Right, and I know your objection, of course, well, that won't happen, and I agree with that, right? 100%. You cannot view things in such a way, like people will take a claim to things, right? That this is mine and it is not yours, right? That it's just bound to happen.
How does he avoid the reality? Let's say he sets up this society where everybody's living, the guardians especially are living in a community. There will be friends. You're going to have some guardian. If you're a guardian, you're going to have some guardian buddies of yours that you're going to just have an affection for and a respect for whatever reason. Maybe share a sense of humor or whatever. And you're going to have friends in that cohort that you care about more than the other people you don't know as well or don't like as well. I don't know how he deals with that. How do you deal with, if you're really into this gal, then she's having sex with some other dude. You don't think that's going to be disruptive? I mean, what planet does he live on, and vice versa? Right. Same thing for the women. I really like that dude. He's a hot guardian, and then he's having sex with all these other women,
right?
Because she can't win a battle or something. Are you crazy? And what if the women are selective? Like, say there's a woman who's selective and only has sex with one of them. So she knows who the father is. Right. It's Doug, right?
Right.
Because she hasn't had sex with anybody else. She knows Doug is the dad. What's to stop her from saying, hey, Doug, you're the dad of this kid over here. Is the one with the red hair?
Right.
Like you, Doug? The scarlet red hair? And then he's like, then he's going to be partial. And we haven't gotten to the fact that he wants them to bring their kids to battle.
Right.
Which is the dumbest tactical thing you do. Was I talking to you about the book, audio book about the Empire of the Summer Moon, which is about the Native Americans? Yeah, so it's a great book.
I think you've mentioned that you're listening to it, yeah.
And part of the reason why they lost or they were destined to lose is because they were with their families, right. and the white soldiers eventually were just as brutal as the Indians were, scalping them and killing their kids and their women. Of course, women were quite often combatants, but not always. Especially when they surrendered and they had them surrounded, they still killed them. And so they had an inherent weakness because the soldiers could come from far east in much greater numbers. If you're going to have, you have to learn how to be a soldier. So you bring the kids. As soon as they can ride a horse, they're going to be there at the battle. And of course, they're going to fight more for them. But if I'm the opposing side, I'm going to do a flanking maneuver. I'm going to go after the kids. Right. And there'll be total mayhem. Right. Because you'll break ranks because all you're going to care about is saving your kid. Doug is going to save the little redheaded kid first, right? Because that's his kid and he's going to have a bond with him, whether Plato likes it or not. And it's just so impractical and so stupid and absurd. It's just absurd. Yeah. Because
I think it gets back to his complete focus on education, right? I think we were talking like Alan Bloom was, the Republic is about education, right? And so his argument is, we kind of get into, well, women will be in war is where he moves on after that. Right. And he says, well, of course, then you'd have to have the kids there because they will get that direct experience. They will know what war is like, and then they will grow up to be better warriors, right? Just the continued like sort of improvement of the state is his idea, right? That's like sort of the peak of education.
Yes.
So you'd be there, well, how will they be? Well, put them on horses, and then they can ride away if it gets too bad.
Yeah, yeah.
Of course.
Yeah, because the other side won't have horses to ride after them and be stronger horsemen than these children who will freak out.
Right.
And what happens when they lose a battle? And then like even his interlocutor mentions, well, if they lose a battle, won't the whole society be wiped out because all the kids will be there still?
Right.
No, they won't lose because they'll really fight
so good.
hard.
Yeah.
They'll fight so hard because they know the kids will get slaughtered.
Right. Right.
But what you want to do as an opponent of that is you want to wipe them out. And you can wipe the entire society out in one battle because all their kids are going to be there.
Right. He does actually, interestingly, put like some guidelines for like just war theory almost,
Yes.
kind of in slight here. He says, well, we shouldn't enslave Greeks is one of the things, right? Don't enslave, your own people, right? That's just more likely that your own people will be, turned over to the barbarians and things like that.
It's enslave everyone else.
Yes, of course.
Because,
of course.
why not?
Yeah, why not? But
slavery in itself isn't bad, I guess.
Yes.
Right? Is that what he's saying?
Essentially, yeah.
Slavery's okay.
Yeah.
You just shouldn't enslave Greeks.
Yeah.
Why? What logic is it? Because, we're all the same people.
Right.
Really?
Yeah.
I mean, there are a lot of differences between the Greeks in that day and age. I mean, there are city-states, and I mean, between whatever.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying.
Yes, I know what you're saying. But he continues on. He says, well, we wouldn't have, you should not, plunder in war. You should definitely not loot corpses and things like that. So he does, set up like good sort of basic just war principles. Interestingly enough, of course, there's no real enforcement mechanism besides we would just be the more just people and we wouldn't do those things because we've been educated as such.
And what about our allies? Because he talks about, the if there's two other factions that remember there's a couple chapters ago. Yeah. So his buddy says, well, what if there's like two other forces that are allied against it? Well, we'll make a deal with one because they'll see how strong we are. Mm-hmm. Are they going to be able to stop that group that are allies from looting? Mm-hmm. I mean, when especially in this time, that was the spoils of war.
Right.
You would loot the corpses. I mean, what do you do? Just leave them out in the field, or I don't know what you're going to do with it. Right. But especially if they have better armor or weapons or whatever, you just outnumber them. You kill them all. Mm-hmm. You're going to take their swords. You're going to take all their stuff, and especially if you're taking slaves. Why is it okay to enslave your opponents, but you can't loot their stuff? Mm-hmm. Of course, you're going to loot their stuff. They're not taking the stuff with them into slavery. Anywho.
Yes. So that kind of concludes, that section talking about the family and war and everything like that. Mm-hmm. So if I can do my best at, bringing it into his sort of analogy, which is not going to be perfect. But I think, there is a very common through line here of like everything in common, right? We're all one sort of people, both men and women are the same and the children are the same and everything's held in sort of common for the common good. And even our enemies, if they're Greeks, they're sort of part of us.
Mm-hmm. Very Marxist and communist of him. You go ahead.
But to kind of talk about as we go back to like the three parts of the soul, or if that's sort of the comparison we're making, that, if you draw that back to that, well, it's sort of emphasizing the point that, this is all sort of one thing, right? That your reason should have control like over your passions, right? You should be guided, towards virtue and towards truth and things like that. But that doesn't mean that your passions aren't part of you. That it doesn't mean that it's just something that you just, can excise out of you and you'll just be this, pure, reasonable being, right? That's still part of you. That is still part of, the state, and that is still part of you as an individual if we're talking about the soul.
Yes.
So that's my best attempt at working that back into his soul.
And I think you did an admirable job last time making that analogy and that argument for the last time. But this one, he's in the detail. Right. He's in the grass, in the field, and he's building this structure.
Right.
And it's all cattywampus.
Right.
And that's the problem with big theory philosophy. Mm-hmm. We were talking about utopia. When you get down to brass tacks, when you actually get down to taxes, that's hard. How do you set tax policy? Which we haven't gotten to. How all this is going to get funded. Yeah, well, everybody's just going to do their own stuff and share everything. Mm-hmm. Really? Mm-hmm. What if, is everything going to be shared? There's not going to be any material wealth.
Right.
There's always going to be something that people hold with value, whether it's sentimental value or actual physical gold type value. But everybody has something that they want to keep. I think I told you the story when I went to a monastery as a young kid.
Yeah.
Even the monastery, they had a vow of poverty. They had no assets, and you lived in a community. I forget what it was. Was it a watch? It was some sort of really nice little thing that his dad gave him when he was ordained or was joined the brotherhood or whatever. I'm like, well, whose is that? Well, it's mine. Well, oh, okay. Well, how is that possible that you have this nice thing?
Right.
And of course, I was a little kid, but. It's not like we debated or anything, but it was just struck me as odd that my dad was really stressing, it's a really beautiful community. And he's right. I don't mean to criticize my dad's, praising these people because it's a great thing that they were doing this, but it's not truly shared.
Right.
It'll never be truly shared. And you can't set up an economy where there's no incentive to do more than what everybody else is doing, because then everybody will just kind of like, it'll just settle into the muck.
Right. Yeah. No, I agree. I agree. Yeah, I think he is very, very bad in the particulars. Right.
Yes.
I think he is very good in broad strokes. I think. I enjoyed reading this book. I don't know if you do, but I enjoy reading it for that purpose.
I enjoyed defaming Plato.
Yes, well, that's good.
So I do get some joy out of it. I'm in a bad mood anyways.
Yeah, well, that's all right. Because then he turns to, now we actually get to the question of, well, is this practical, right? His interlocutors say, well...
Oh, yes. Where was that at? What page was that?
This is 189, right?
Yes,
the start of part 7 in this edition that we have here, but still part of book 5 for us.
Yes.
But he says, they remind him, he says, well, Socrates, right, we'll grant you this, if this existed, we can see this working, right? I think they give him too much leeway there. But then they say, well, how would this actually work? How would this actually exist? And Socrates even seems to say, well, it probably couldn't. At least that's sort of what I got out of it, where he says, well, it probably can't happen, right? This is the ideal pattern. And he says, you can't really fault me for describing the ideal, right? Where he says, well, what about a painter who paints the ideal man, right? Would we fault him for making a bad painting if that man doesn't really exist? And I said, well, no, it's still a great painting of the ideal man. He says, that's what I'm trying to do. I'm like the painter here. I don't know if we ever actually can get to this, but we should try to get to something close to this if we can. This is the ideal. This is maybe the unachievable thing, but things like this are more likely to bring about justice in the state. So that's sort of the defense he gives, which I think he recognizes, and I think this is Plato sort of keying into that too, where it's like this might not be, step-by-step advice on how to do things, that it's not quite, this might not be something that's actually achievable.
You're giving him a lot of credit.
I try. You're giving him no credit, so I've got to compensate. You're giving him negative credit.
Well,
you're taking credit away from him every single time you speak, so I've got to do something to defend him.
Fair enough. Well, he says, he talks about that painter. He says, is our picture any worse drawn then because we can't show how it can be a realized in fact, how it can be realized in fact? And I wrote in the margin, yes.
Yeah.
It's not as great of a painting if it can't be realized. If it's just an idealized false portrait, I think it is not as good.
I don't think he's saying that the portrait itself would not be real.
Is it any worse drawn then because we can't show how it can be realized in fact? Yes.
No, he's saying like the man himself can't be realized, like what is in the painting. He's saying the painting exists, but the man in the painting.
It's worse. It's not as drawn as well if that person can't exist.
Really?
Yes.
Oh. So like landscapes that don't actually exist, those are worse than landscapes that do exist?
That can't exist?
Well, yeah. I mean, what about like a fantasy landscape?
Yeah, they're not as good.
Huh.
100% not as good.
Really?
Have you ever seen a fantasy landscape and said, oh, that's so great. That's the best thing ever?
I guess not.
No, there's not, because it's false. There's no truth to it.
Yeah, well, I mean, that gets
that's
back
like modern art.
to
It's like Picasso.
I guess it does kind of get back to like Tolkien's point that, whatever reality that an imagined world has is because it partakes of, actual reality.
Yes, thank you. Bringing it back to Tolkien.
Yes,
the
you're welcome.
Wise man.
But I mean, he
much
does
wiser than Plato.
Well,
I think
I might give him that. Yeah, I might agree too. But I mean, the golden leaves in Lothlorien, right? That sort of shine and glow, right? Those wouldn't really exist, but they'd still be beautiful. Like if you painted a picture of them. I guess your point would be they wouldn't be as real or as beautiful as a landscape that could exist.
Are they any worse because it's not possible? And my answer is yes.
Interesting.
I don't value as much something that is so ideal or supposedly pure that it could never exist in reality. There's a certain falseness to it.
Interesting.
In my opinion.
Interesting. I don't know if I agree with that.
Okay.
All right, let's move on. But yeah, that's essentially what he says, his defense there of, well, it's not actually a practical thing. It's like, well, I'm just trying to give the ideal. You can't really fault me for that.
Yeah, it really isn't a defense for that this could happen.
Right.
He's just saying, well, even if it can happen, isn't it just as good? Mm-hmm. I mean, that's what he says. Right. It probably can't happen, but it's just as good as if it could happen. No, it'd be a much better system for a utopia if it was at least possible to exist.
Yeah.
Of course it would be a better theory.
Right. But then he continues sort of the next section. This is the last section we'll talk about this time.
Yes.
Is how to actually define the philosopher, right? Where his interlocutors go back to him and they say, well, what is? Well, Socrates kind of starts out by saying, well, he says, well, those who will lead will be guided by philosophy. They will be the philosophers. They will be the rulers here. That is sort of what we have to say. Again, going back to that sort of education idea.
Yes.
But they say, well, it's time for a definition of what philosophy actually means. You really haven't kind of set this up, and this is where he talks about sort of the different types of knowledge.
Yes.
Right, where he contrasts sort of actual knowledge from opinions and things like that. Where he says,
everybody's got an opinion.
Yes, exactly. But he says, really, knowledge is really that there are philosophies that love of learning, right? That's really what it means in the Greek. The philein, to love, is the verb there, and then sophos, meaning wisdom, right? Philosophy, the love of wisdom, right? And so the real philosopher, the true philosopher, is those who really want to know everything, those who want to know what the natures of things really are.
The truth.
The truth.
Yes.
Yes, exactly. It's not just those, right? He contrasts that with the people who just have opinions about things.
Yes.
Right? He says, those who just sort of try and see all of the art possible, who go to see all the sites just because they think they should and they don't really care what it is and things like that.
Yes.
Those are just the people who are seeking opinions, seeking not the actual truth itself.
Yes. This I didn't mind. This
I thought this was really good.
Yeah.
Where he says, opinion and knowledge then have these different correlates, or he talks about faculties, right? These are different faculties, right? To have an opinion and to actually know something, these are two distinct things, right? Knowing isn't just having an opinion about something. Knowing is when you actually know the truth of a thing. And I think that's a very good point. I think that kind of gets to your good quote of your opinion can be wrong. That
Yes.
if you do have an opinion about something that you think is just true, but is not, well then your opinion is wrong.
Yes.
Because,
Thank you. Thank you for accurately quoting me.
You're welcome.
And I get more and more aggravated at people that are like, well, it's just my opinion. I'm getting really hostile to like, well, I think it's beautiful.
Right.
Well, you're wrong.
Right.
Like, I can't be wrong.
Right.
Yeah, you can.
Right. Because they use that kind of as a cop-out. Well, because it's true that I believe this thing.
Yeah.
Therefore, there is truth into what I'm saying.
Yes.
But the thing that you believe might not be true. It might be true that you believe that thing.
Yes.
But that doesn't mean you can just brush it off as, well, it's just my opinion.
Yeah.
It's true that I believe that.
Yeah.
But
it's
if you believe
irrelevant if you believe
Yes.
it. It's irrelevant.
It has to be true.
The question
Yes.
is whether it is true what your opinion is stating.
Right.
Like, I don't care if you believe. I don't have a polygraph test hooked up to you, you weirdo. The question is if you're right or wrong. Well, I think I'm right. Irrelevant.
And that's what he says. He says this is at the top of
That's correct.
a 201 for us. This is 478A as sections. He says, of course, knowledge is related to what is. It knows what is as it is. He says that is really what knowledge is. It is knowing what existence is. And there's actually another really good sort of editorial section on this as well, where he talks about sort of the Greek, right? This word enai, right? To be, right? Or to exist, right? And it's used in a whole bunch of different ways in Greek, where he says, really you're just getting at what is the sort of existence of this thing? What is the essence of this thing? That is what it means to know, is to know what is as it is.
Yes.
To know really the nature, the truth of a thing. And I think that's absolutely correct.
Yes. And it's admirable that he values that.
Yes, I agree. See,
We're
going to be able to end on a high note this time. And I like what he says here too. He says, he's going back and forth. He says, is it what is not, or is it impossible even to hold an opinion about what is not? Right? He says we can have an opinion. We can have essentially a wrong opinion about something. He says, consider, an opinion is surely related to something, or is it possible to hold an opinion and yet grasp nothing? No, that's impossible. So a man who holds an opinion grasps something, yes, but what is not can hardly be called something. It is, properly speaking, nothing.
Yes.
He says if you were grasping something that is not the truth, this kind of gets back to the whole Platonic thing about, whatever is true exists more, right?
Yes.
Getting into the Platonic ideals and things like that. Well, if you believe something that is not real, right, you're trying to grasp something, but whatever you're trying to grasp at is ultimately nothing.
Yes.
And this is taken up by Augustine. I think I mentioned this a couple episodes ago really well, where he's talking about, God is like the fullness of being, right? And every sort of good action that you do is really just orienting you towards God.
Yes.
And when you sin, right, and this is especially clear in like the Greek, right, where it means to like miss the mark and things like that is really what the word for sin is, hamartia in Greek. And sort of the idea is that if you're sinning, you're just turning away from God. You are choosing nothing. You are becoming less because you are not choosing what is.
Yes.
Right? If goodness is being, if being is good, then non-being, is evil. Right? Evil is just nothing. Right? When you're doing sin, you're just doing nothing. You're not actually accomplishing anything. You're turning away from the good.
Yes.
And so that's at least a good insight from ultimately from Plato that I think is brought over into to Christianity, I think, in a really nice way. Yes.
Agreed.
But then he says,
There's more.
yes. Well, just to conclude, because he does say, kind of setting up this line of degrees, right? He says ignorance is really grasping nothing,
Yes.
right? So you're really not grasping at anything at all. That's ignorance. That's if you just know something that's false. Opinion can sometimes be in the middle, that there might be some little bit of truth you're grasping at, but it's not really the full truth. Knowledge is at the end. When you've grasped the fullness of the truth of a thing to knowing something as it is.
Yes.
Right? So he sort of sets up this scale, right? And really the philosophers, these people who are going to rule the city, they're really concerned with knowledge.
Right.
They're concerned with knowing things as they are. They will be the complete opposite of ignorant. There'll be some people in the middle there who will have opinions, but they won't have the full truth. And it's really only these philosophers that we can have ruling the city.
Yes.
And that's where we really conclude Book 5 there. We'll talk more about what it means to be a philosopher ruler next time.
Yes. So what were your thoughts? You asked me at the beginning what my thoughts were on this reading. What are your thoughts?
I think this is a pretty poor showing from Plato. I think this is one of his worst bits in the Republic, when he actually gets down to how the family will function. What are we going to do with these, insufficient children and things like that, right? It's not good. It's not good. It's completely impractical. Usually I'm not as bothered by impracticality as you are in this book, but this even bothers me.
Well, it doesn't make sense either, because I don't know. I guess he doesn't even want any of the non-guardian children to be around the guardians. I guess that's what he's really trying to filter out. But you would expect that, like even with his philosophy, where each person has their own particular goals. But wouldn't you have better carpenters if they were raised in a guardian family that had carpenters and guardians and artists and or auxiliaries? I don't know why he thought that they had to be segregated in that manner from such an early age.
Right.
Because if the guardians are really going to care about the auxiliaries and the tradesmen and the other people, wouldn't it be better if they lived among them, grew up among them, and understood them and cared for them?
Right.
And so I guess his answer would be no. You don't want them to be commingled or something. But you'd have to figure. But he did allow for some people that were children of carpenters to become guardians.
Right.
So how does that even happen? And why doesn't it happen in the other way?
Right.
But I guess
think he
say
does say it does,
happen.
but they then have to be kicked out and sent
demoted.
down. Right. Yeah. Exactly. So I mean, this is, I think, the worst part of the book, at least so far.
Well, the
we'll
devil's in the details
Yeah.
with any of these things. You want to remake society, it's like he's not trying to tick around the edges.
Right.
Holy.
Yeah, and that's why I'll stick with my my opinion. Maybe it's an opinion, maybe it's knowledge. That this is, I think, maybe it's just ignorance, and I'm just in blissful ignorance here. That I think it is ultimately more so about the human soul. And I think that is more of his goal. At least I think that's the way you can give him the most benefit of the doubt here. That really, I think he does. I don't know if you agree. I think he does admit here that it is not practical.
Yes.
And in with his contradictions, right, where he says, well, we can't have, sort of dialogues and things like that, but it's written as a dialogue. I think he knows that he is contradicting himself. I think he is, clearly he's a very smart person.
Yes.
Maybe one of the smartest to ever live, right, in Plato. He just rolled his eyes for all those who couldn't see that. So I think he knows that. I don't think he is just rambling just because.
Yeah, it's kind of an unusual, because it's really a digression in the conversation.
Right.
So I'm kind of curious as to why he put this in.
Yeah.
Because he kind of skipped over it. And it was fairly effective just to say, oh, this is what I think.
Right.
With it leaving the details to be further explained later.
Right.
And that would have been much better. He doesn't subject himself to criticism, but the less specific he is about it.
Right.
But he went into it for whatever reason.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
Yeah. Well, do you have any other final thoughts for this episode?
No, I think I said enough.
Yes.
Don't you think?
I think so.
I think I shared my
you did.
thoughts. I think I articulated it fairly well.
Yes. You can, of course, get your free matchbooks if you tweet at us at
Now, I did see
ULMTD
somebody
Opinions.
made a comment.
Yes, but not specifically requesting matchbooks.
Well, I don't know. Do they have to? There's one comment in the last 6 months. Get this dude's address. I just want to divulge it.
Yeah, probably.
Give us a P.O. box or something.
But
Ship it to your cousin. Give us their address.
yeah, there you go. Send them 1,000 matchbooks.
I'm not going to do that.
That'd be half of them.
Yeah, it was a 2,000.
2,000, yes. It's 40 boxes of 50 matchbooks.
We're going to have to get more.
It's ridiculous. No, we don't.
Your brother is using them as decorations for his Christmas party.
Jonah or Eli?
Tomorrow.
Oh.
Jonah.
Oh, why?
Just because it's fun. They are pretty.
Oh, yeah, that's true. Well, that's good.
kinda
We'll get
like
some publicity out there.
Yeah. Our audience will double. And then it'll drop back to nothing.
All right. Well, this has been season 13, episode 6 of Unlimited Opinions. I've been Adam Bishop.
Still Mark Bishop.